Welcome back, guys. My name is Chris, and in this video, we're going to be talking about learning cloud support for NetSuite, also known as LCS. Now, I am going to try to stay as objective in this video as possible, given the fact that LCS is my major competitor when it comes to NetSuite training, and the fact that really LCS was my motivation and what sparked me to start making super training and various NetSuite training in the first place. So with all of that in mind, first let's just understand what is LCS. LCS is just a name for NetSuite's online training service. It's a place you can go on online. Technically, you actually log in through Oracle, and it's just a repository of a bunch of videos on NetSuite. And in this video, I'm going to talk a lot about the content. I'm even going to show you how you would log into that, talk a little bit about the quality of it, what are some of the good things, as well as, in my opinion, some of the bad things, and just give you a general understanding of LCS. And first thing I should bring up in relation to LCS is, generally speaking, when companies get LCS, well, first off, they're getting NetSuite, and then usually LCS is just included along with the sale. Most clients don't even realize that it is something that they can have or not have when they're purchasing NetSuite. So with that in mind, let's actually take a look at how you would log in and access Learning Cloud support type materials via what's actually called Oracle MyLearn, is the portal that you use to log into this. So let's take a look at that. All right, so we're here in Google, and again, although the product is called Learning Cloud Support in terms of when you purchase it, this is how you'd actually be able to access the various materials that you would if you're dealing with LCS. So we're going to go to Oracle MyLearn. If we click on that, sometimes it'll have ads at the top here. In this case, it skipped the ads and took us right here. So we'll click on Oracle MyLearn. And keep in mind, this is Oracle, right? NetSuite has its own website. That's not the site that we're on currently. And it can be very confusing for people where they start sifting around, they can't find what they're looking for. And the problem is that they're sifting around on the NetSuite website, not on the Oracle website, which is really that parent company of which NetSuite is just one more product in their arsenal of products. So we got a pop up here, we'll close that. So we're here, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna come up here to account, and we're gonna log in. Now, obviously, if you've got LCS for the first time, you're gonna have, for the administrator who's, with the company and all individual users, you're gonna have a login information, passwords, etc. You go through that process. But assuming you've initially logged in, this is where you'd access it. You come to log in, you're gonna have to fill in your email information. I'm gonna blur this out just so you don't have my personal email that I actually use for this stuff. So we'll hit next on that. Hopefully my password is all logged in. Now, I haven't actually prepped any of this in advance, so hopefully I actually think we're gonna maybe run into some problems as we go through this. Just to give you a little bit of a concept of some of the types of things you're gonna run into when you're logging into LCS to access these courses. This is one of the most common, not complaints, but the questions I get, or people get confused, is they can log in here and get immediately confused because, it'll welcome you, say, hey, Chris, you're here in MyLearn, and you scroll down, and people just look at this and go, what am I dealing with? We've got Oracle AI, cloud applications, SaaS, industry solutions. We got OCI. You start going through this and you go, what am I even looking at? The problem is it's very easy to miss this. Even though you're technically trying to get LCS for NetSuite, what ends up happening is when you sign in, it's very easy to sign in and it just boots you to Oracle University. So that's for their other Oracle products. What you want is to click on this little globe thing and switch it to NetSuite. So it's very easy to overlook. It says, hey, are you sure you want to switch? Yes, you do. You're still technically on the Oracle website, but it's going to now shift it over to be all the things relevant to NetSuite, which is obviously applicable for you. So now that you're here, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. So in this particular case, I haven't used this in a very long time. So it's got a lot of older things in here, and you can see it's going to show you you're in progress. Now you can sift down through this web page, and it's got these tiles that will look into various things. Some of these are going to be full-fledged courses that are structured. Sometimes they're going to have live events that you can log into and actually be in live webinars where a NetSuite employee is going to be walking you through maybe a new feature, something like that. And you can scroll down, you can go by category, etc. I generally find, personally, it's easier to come up to library. And this is where you can just get a little bit better of an overview. You can look at things by solution area, by specific topic, or if you're looking for certifications, you can find that right here. Now, I do want to make a point talking about certifications because I know a lot of people are going to be watching my videos are trying to get their NetSuite certifications, whether that's as a consultant or maybe just an administrator. That is a common thing I get asked about. And a lot of people that take my courses are looking for the certification prep courses. And one thing that I've been getting questions on a lot recently is about how to actually access the certifications. Now, as of, I believe it was June, maybe July 2025, NetSuite completely changed the structure and the way they've configured their certifications. Not the exams themselves, but how you access them. Totally changed just a couple months ago. So a lot of people are scrambling to figure out how to get to that, especially because a lot of my older YouTube videos are no longer applicable in terms of how you actually access the training. So I want to point out first what people are often doing and why that's not the right approach. So if we come to this other tab, we're here in Google. If we look for what you used to be able to do is type in NetSuite certification, and you used to come here. It's a very clear website. Sometimes you'd have ads, promos above that, but this is where you would want to go previously. You click on this and it brings you to this page, which used to be the exact place you wanted to go. And you would scroll down here and there was some kind of random information. And eventually you get to a listing of all the certifications that you would click on. Now, if you want to get to those, I actually don't even totally know. I think if you click get started, what happens is it puts you through this loop. It's very confusing. And it's just not an easy site to navigate. And because it used to be the place to go, that people will now start sifting through there endlessly, convinced that it's there somewhere, when in fact, it's actually not here at all. So if you come here and you scroll down, hopefully it comes up at this point. Yeah, here we go. So this whole page that we're looking at here, this used to be accessible on the website, just like this, but instead of just having each one of these certifications, every time you clicked on one of them, it had the study guide and the practice questions for that certification. And there was a button way lower down that said, you actually want to do the test. You click on that, it brings you to another page, then you go to another page, etc. And then you could finally sign up for your certification. Now, if you go, oh, I want to get certified as an administrator, and you click ready to get certified, it takes you through this endless loop where it brings you to this page and you go, oh, I guess I click on this thing. And then that brings you to this page and you go, okay, yeah, I am ready to get certified. And then it brings you back to this page. It just doesn't go anywhere. And the fact is you're not going to be able to access it from this page. So for anyone that's trying to get their certifications, don't bother with NetSuite anymore. You have to do it through MyLearn. So we're back here on the Oracle MyLearn. You want to make sure you're on the NetSuite portal. And of course you have to create a MyLearn account, etc. Now you can do that for free. You have to understand you don't need a company pass necessarily to initially get an Oracle MyLearn login, etc. You can come in here. And actually what you're seeing right now, this is a free account. I deliberately took one that had the company pass already expired so that you can see it how you would normally see it for any general user. You can come here to certification. So it's going to bring you to this page. It gives you a couple additional things. If we scroll down here, you can start to see the available certifications. So let's say I want to get certified on Suite Foundation. So you click on this and notice, actually, let's back up for 1 second. I didn't point this out, but if we look at that, notice right here at the top, it says company pass. So what's interesting about that is this thing is going to require, if you want to do the prep course for Suite Foundation, that's going to require a paid company pass. You can't just do it for free. So that is one thing to keep in mind. However, you can access, and what people have been asking about a lot is how to get those certification questions, because you can't get it on NetSuite anymore. You have to get it through this path. And so the way they've done this is you click on that whole tile for Suite Foundation, and then it actually gives you a few different things. The first couple things we're looking at here, this one that says prepare for certification, that's what used to be known as the study guide. So, and notice what it says right here, free Explorer Pass. It says that on these first 4 options. That means that if you've just got MyLearn, you don't have any company pass, you can still come in and access this. So you can take a look at that study guide, which is not an unhelpful tool, but it's not particularly helpful either. But you can absolutely check that out if you want. It gives you a basic framework for the exam. I also talk about it in my YouTube videos, but that's fine. And if you want to take advantage of the practice questions, which I highly recommend you do, then you can get it. You can see here, it's free company pass. You click on this, it gives you a file you can download. You can take advantage of that. Now, the one for 2025, I've said this in previous videos, the one they just came out with for 2025, it's the same test, practice test that they had for 2024, it's almost identical to the one they had in 2023. And even if you go as far back as 2018, the practice test really hasn't changed that much. And frankly, the test for Suite Foundation also hasn't changed that much. So understand, they move very slowly when it comes to their certification mechanics and changes. Other than taking it off of NetSuite and putting it fully in Oracle, they haven't changed the content at all, or very, very little over a number of years. So that's just one thing you can think with. And they have a couple additional free resources, but honestly, these are not particularly helpful. It's like, hey, if you want NetSuite, this is just some general information to keep in mind. These are not actually going to prep you for the exam whatsoever. It's when you come down here into subsidiaries and custom forms and all of these other module courses that you get the actual, what I would call LCS training to learn, in this case, how to prepare for the Suite Foundation exam. Okay, so that was a bit of a deep dive segue on the subject of certifications, but let's jump back again, just talking about LCS overall. And at this point, I want to talk a little bit about what are the pros of LCS. What are some of the positives, the reasons you might look at getting something like LCS? Again, I'm going to try to stay objective here. There's no question, when you start going through the MyLearn website and you look at all the content that's available with LCS, it is extensive. They've got, I don't know if it's thousands of videos, but minimally over 1,000 videos going into every nook and cranny there is to know about NetSuite. And of course, with that, if you're trying to go deep on a particular subject like fixed asset management, then you're going to find a whole course or even multiple modules all related to the subject of FAM. So that is definitely a benefit. And many of their courses come with practice exercises that go at the end of, sometimes it's just modules, sometimes it's the full-length course. They'll have these practice exercises at the end so that if you're trying to learn about roles and permissions, you can actually follow step by step. Click on this button, put this feature in, add it to this subsidiary. Then you've got this role with this permission. It can be a nice way to just be handheld through a practical exercise. And that is, in my opinion, really where the benefits for having LCS end. At this point, let's now take a look at what I personally consider are the downsides or the negatives of LCS. And the first thing I would say is that it is not cheap. It has a misunderstanding because NetSuite can often be so expensive and that LCS is just tacked on with the purchase of NetSuite. People don't realize how much they're actually spending for LCS and the fact that it's not mandatory to get. Now, in terms of the exact pricing, it really just depends what you're getting in terms of the tier of NetSuite purchase and LCS that you're going with, how many users you have. All of this can dramatically change the price of LCS. But even if you've got a company pass with just a couple users, you can easily be looking at several thousands of dollars just for that. And of course, that's over a contract. So let's say you have a 3-year contract, you're going to be paying that every year for that LCS subscription. And if you've got dozens of users that want to have access to LCS, you can easily be looking at tens of thousands of dollars for that company pass. The next thing you need to keep in mind is that the content is not necessarily up to date. A lot of the content you're going to find on LCS is stuff that has been in existence for 5 or maybe even 10 years. And as a result, what happens is if they release a bunch of videos or a full course on fixed asset management and new features have come out for FAM, they're just going to come up with update videos to talk about a new addition to that one particular module, or it might even be bundled in with a bunch of new features for that release in total, as opposed to taking down the original FAM content and coming out with entirely new up-to-date content on the subject of FAM. That's just not how they approach it. NetSuite really puts what I would consider the bare minimum of attention and resources on the subject of their videos and content that are on LCS. So that is something to keep in mind. It's not that all the content will be out of date, but a lot of it has been around for years. And so it's not necessarily the most up-to-date content. But the main critique I have with LCS, and really the reason I started making super training in the first place, is because LCS is a masterclass in creating dry and uninteresting content. This is something I have heard, by the way, this is not just my own opinion. This is after talking to hundreds of different clients. And of course, when I started making my own content, I did extensive surveys with dozens and dozens of people to find out exactly why they didn't like LCS, what were the problems they ran into it. And the constant complaint I heard was that it was difficult to engage with. In some cases, people just started watching and immediately said this is not good and they didn't like it. But a lot of clients, they don't even know why they don't like it. And they want the information. They want to be able to have a better understanding of LCS and NetSuite overall, but they try to go into the content. And whether it's a few hours or a few weeks later, the end result from everyone I've ever talked to on the subject of LCS is that they just couldn't make it to where they wanted to get. There's a lot of different reasons for that. One of the things that I find, and my big complaint with it, is that they don't actually have instructors that you can engage with and that you can see and interact with. You've got what I'm almost positive is an actor who's reading off a script. Some NetSuite consultant made a script on exactly what needs to be talked about. Some voice actor is just reading down the list. So you get this nameless, faceless instructor who's in a total monotone taking you through all of the content. And the way that they structure it is, if you've seen any of my content, you can probably tell that I try to focus, if I'm talking about FAM, I'm going to focus on not every one of the 5,000 features that all relate to FAM. I'm going to talk about the 30 features that are critical to understand to make sure that you can actually use FAM in the first place. Everything else, you can go to other places to get a deeper understanding of exactly what every single feature does. They take the opposite approach where they go, every single field, every button, every function, every feature, every possible configuration has to be talked about in an encyclopedia manner. So it's like they're reading from the dictionary. A, explanation. B, explanation, with no context of why you would want to use A instead of B. Or if you're using B with F, how do those things work together? And if you're this kind of company, what are the problems you might face when you're trying to implement that? They're not going to get into that at all. They're just going to read down that dictionary, explanation, definition by definition. That's the way the content goes. It tends to be very slow, very dry, and very little practical application built into the training. And I should also point out, and this is somewhat indicative of the quality of the training, when you deal with the actual experts of NetSuite, which are the consultants that implement it, uniformly, consultants do not rely on LCS to understand some module that they need to configure. What they use is Suite Answers, which is a great resource and has extensive documentation on the system and how you properly set it up. So if you want to have a deep understanding of fixed asset management, Suite Answers is the appropriate place to go into to get that deep knowledge of the subject. If you want a general surface level understanding of how to navigate around in NetSuite and utilize it, it's simply what NetSuite is not good at and what I try to accomplish with my own courses. So that's my overall opinion on the subject of LCS. Obviously, I feel very strongly on the subject, and hopefully I gave you a better understanding of what it does and what it's not necessarily good at. So if you found this video helpful, please hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and by all means, check out my course website and all the various courses I have that can train you on how to use NetSuite. So with that in mind, I hope to see you in the next video.